no further ado, I introduce you to retired Colonel Bill Schafer. God bless you.
Okay. If I put that down, can everybody hear me? Let's see here. I'll use it. You got it out here? Okay. Everybody hear me good?
Yeah.
All right. Listen. Wow. That
That good?
made the hair go.
I know.
Fired me up. I'm not sure I can outdo that. But I'll give it a shot. Listen. I want to thank each of you. Forgive my glasses. I guess I was gonna say I'm old, but they'll probably kick me in the shin. And I'm not going to read to you, but I want to make sure I don't forget certain things. So I've got my little crutch, because I'm not a great speaker. I'm not a great speech giver. But when we get to the question and answer piece, what I will prove to you is that I'll answer your questions, and I'll answer them directly, and I won't answer them with waffle. It's quite an honor for me to have a group gathered tonight. You humble me with your presence. My name is Bill Schafer. I'm a candidate for Congress in U.S. Congress in Iowa District 3. And I didn't grow up in Iowa. I'm gonna tell you how I got to Iowa here in just a second. But I didn't grow up in Iowa, so getting folks to know who I am is quite a challenge. But here's the reason I didn't grow up in Iowa, and why I chose to become an Iowan. You'll notice, if you picked up one of my cards, the little slogan that my wife and I came up with: American by birth, soldier by profession, and Iowan by choice. So how did we get here? I'm a son of a soldier. My father and mother are from New York. Dad joined the Army. I'm getting instructions from the back. That's good. So my mom and dad are from New York. Dad joined the Army, served 23 years. Vietnam era type fella, and I point that out for a reason I normally get to later, but another thing that humbles me in my current state of affairs is how often I get thanked for my service, and it has a special meaning to me knowing that my father didn't quite get treated that way when he got back. But he doesn't care. You'll never hear him say that. He is very proud. He's very happy that I get treated well. Mom and Dad had five children. My four siblings and I were all born in a different state. And now one of them is buried in Arlington, and she died of natural causes. But and then my two brothers and my sister are all in a different state now. And so 23 years of service for my dad, and then I joined the Army. Went in the infantry, and met my wife in Aberdeen, which was my dad's last tour. 35 years ago, she's in the back. Well, 38 or 9 years ago, I don't know. We were married 35 years, and we have 3 great American kids that are all self-reliant, all taking care of themselves, and great Americans, good, productive citizens. 2 of them are 2 daughters. The oldest are in Atlanta, Georgia. They're both managers of stores, and our son is working on a doctorate degree in Tucson, Arizona at the University of Arizona. So our family is spread out, and so then I came to Rock Island Arsenal as my last tour on active duty, and about 2011, and my wife and I were hanging out. We hit that old age time where the Army makes you retire because it's a young man's game, and they want familiar with that. So we had to retire, and we started looking at where we wanted to stay. We looked at Iowa as a conservative state. We looked at Iowans as wonderful people, and the Iowa countryside. And yes, believe it or not, I even like the winters because I love hunting. I love going to the woods. So, with the family spread out and being soldiers, we chose to stay in Iowa. I'll get to the politics in a minute. So, just a little bit more about the career. So, I'm a retired colonel, 32 years in the infantry. I enlisted in the reserves in about 1982, and then I got my commission, went on active duty, and was on active duty for 30 years. I'm a parachutist, a Ranger qualified type soldier. I've got a master's degree in human resources and a master's degree in national security. I spent most of my career, well, I spent all of my career kind of split between mostly two things: taking out the education process in deployable units, and then also training units. So when I wasn't in a deployable unit, the type of units you see in the news that are going to Iraq and Afghanistan, or Desert Storm for some of us, then I was trained. I was a Ranger instructor. I taught the Officers Advanced course. I had several training assignments, both in the field type training, but also platform type instruction. I commanded a infantry company in Desert Storm, and then I went back to Iraq as an infantry battalion commander. 30 years worth of awards, and I generally don't do this, but my buddy back at the house keeps kicking me in the shins for not pointing it out. And I was awarded the Bronze Star with Valor on 2 occasions. So what do I really want you to take away from all that? I want you to know me a little bit, but I also want you to consider the experiences of a retired infantry colonel. I commanded at a brigade level. I spent time at the Pentagon at a very senior staff level. My role there was briefing the 4 service chiefs, 4-star generals, on current year training initiatives where we needed to move money in order to take something on that was a current year problem. I ended my career, as I already told you, at Rock Island Arsenal as a operations officer for a 3-star headquarters, and as the chief of staff for that same 3-star headquarters, and that was my last job before retirement. Then I got hired on as a civilian to be a director of human resources. I did that for about 5 years. I quit that job to do this, because you can't run for office if you're working for the federal government. So I quit that job this past May because I saw a need, and I think I have the capacity to do that. So that's what I want you to take away from my description of that career. I have the capacity, I guarantee I have the capacity to do the work. I'd like you to look at my experiences and determine, and I hope you determine, that I have the experience to do this type of work. The policies that we're talking about, as a senior officer, I wrote policy, I executed policy, and I'll tell you something different between me and most politicians is I had to personally live by the policies that I either wrote for my boss or I wrote for my own command. Very good. So, the reason I'm running because we lost this seat in 2018, and I told you I saw Iowa as a conservative state. And I saw politicians not embrace America first and not embrace the great achievements that, at least in my view, that our president was making. And they walked away from him a little bit too much. And the end result of that was the loss of about 39 seats, give or take, and the flip of the House. Well, I'm going to tell you, we need to re-elect President Trump.
Amen. Amen. Yes.
I had to do that because apparently I'm competing with him talking right now. He's going to get thrown out of the room. And I apologize for that. Okay. So, but no, I'm very serious. We need to re-elect President Trump. I mean, how many presidents have we had that kept their promises? How many presidents have we had that worked deregulation? I mean, that's not even talked about very much. The freedoms we talked about earlier. You know, one of the main reasons we lose our freedoms is because we allow the federal government to control so much of our lives. And I'm going to talk about that in a second here too when I get kind of to the platform stuff. But it's going to be a hollow year if we elect a president and we don't deliver a conservative Congress. So I'm running for this seat because this seat should be red. I'm running for this seat because I am willing and able to serve the people of my district. I'm running because I believe the Congress only doesn't have a large enough base of actual conservative politicians. And I want to join those conservative politicians. And when I've done that, then I'll be in a position to support the president and the America First agenda.
Yeah.
So, I want to talk on the platform a little bit, platform type topics. And the first thing I want to tell you is I'm a conservative Republican. I'm a Republican because I'm loyal to this nation, and I won't do something that would cause any seat to be delivered to a liberal. But I'm a conservative first. I'm a constitutional-based person, and I make that emphasis. And if any of you have the time, I'd ask you to go to the Secretary of State did a youth straw poll recently and watch the 2-minute video that I did. And in that 2-minute video, one of the things I say is this, and it is my emphasis on conservative policymaking, or conservative problem solving, I'm sorry. Conservative policy solving. Every problem that we put out there, every problem that comes on the table, we as Americans, not just our politicians, but we as Americans, we should be asking 3 questions in order. First, does the Constitution require a federal government solution to that problem? If it doesn't, and we let the federal government solve that problem, then we just gave up another freedom. What I will do is I will use that analysis on every policy or problem that is put on my desk. And if the answer is not a constitutionally mandated federal responsibility, then I will push that back to the states. States' rights. This is a federal republic. It's a democratic form of government. It is not a democracy. And we need to push those decisions back to the states for a couple of reasons. One, that's the way our country is designed. That's the way we keep our freedoms. But it's also the way we as Americans have the ability to vote with our feet. Because if your state goes in a direction you don't like, you can get up and move to a state where the governance is more to your liking. Every time we let the federal government solve a problem, you can't do that, because now all 50 states are under that same mandate. But it doesn't really stop there. We should also ask, is that really an individual responsibility, an individual right? Do we even want the state solving it? Well, you got to figure that out at the state level. But I would challenge you to ask yourself those 3 questions before, and I believe for a long time now, that we've got too many Americans that as soon as anything happens, what's the government going to do about it? And not just the government, what's the president going to do about it? We allow the media and the politicians to point at the president just so they can kind of bash him. It doesn't matter which president, although they do it a lot to this current one. But that's what we need to do. That's what we need to do. I'm also going to emphasize the Bill of Rights. A lot of folks spend time defending the First Amendment and the Second Amendment just as they should, but I caution all of you, it's the entire Bill of Rights. It's the entire Constitution. It's not okay to just say you're an advocate of one and not another, okay? Now, I'm going to talk about the Second Amendment because I know that's near and dear to everybody's heart in this room, and I'm going to work a gun show this weekend trying to get the signatures and all that. So, but it's a good one. It's a good one for me to provide an emphasis and let you see how I think about these things. Of course, I'm a Second Amendment advocate, but it's more than just the Second Amendment. The idea that these politicians who think they're smarter than you and they kind of have an elitist view on life, they want to talk about, well, red flag laws. What are we going to do to solve this problem that, oh, by the way, I'm not real sure is a federal government problem. But they want to talk about red flag laws. Well, red flag laws don't work. Red flag laws do not solve a problem. Right. Red flag laws take freedoms away from you. Red flag laws will violate at least 3 of our first 10 amendments. It'll violate your right to privacy. A little bit of a stretch, but you know you're not supposed to be unduly fined. Well, let me tell you, if we allow a government servant to come in and take your weapons because somebody complained about you, then you're going to be hiring lawyers. You're going to be going to prove that you should get your guns back, and it's going to cost you money. I see that as an undue fine. So, Second Amendment absolutely stands as it is. Your right to bear arms shall not be infringed, and I will not support a red flag law or anything that gets in front of due process. So national security. Let me talk about that one for a minute. Now, I'm gonna use the issue at the border as an example of how I see national security. Our progressive Republicans, certainly our Democrat liberal side of the aisle, and a lot of our media, they want to use soft language to cause you to think that something's okay. They talk about immigration, all the poor immigrants. And listen, of course that makes anybody have a little bit of an emotional response. Okay, but we can't have an emotional response for 7 billion people. This is a sovereign nation. You can't create policy at the federal level based on the emotions of one or two people. It's got to be what's right for the country. So let me tell you, the issue at the southern border is not immigration. It's illegal entry into a sovereign nation.
Right.
That has to be stopped.
Yes.
Now, then the other one is, well, what are we going to do about those that are already here? Well, I don't know. I've got some ideas, but we can't even address those until the illegal entry is stopped. Now, there's three pieces to that. It's not just the border. The border has, I'm all about the wall. I would design it differently. I've got a tactical mind, a lot of time in infantry, and I would design it would stop the flow. I guarantee you. But probably some of that stuff would give me negative press too. That's okay. A little humor there, but in all seriousness, the border has to be closed with a physical barrier. The Border Patrol has to be resourced. They have to be resourced with electronic stuff and surveillance stuff and drones and all the ideas you've heard. But that's not going to stop the actual problem. The actual problem is the incentives. Why are these folks walking into our country? Well, they're walking into our country because they can get in line for free stuff, right? They can get in line for medical, they can get in line, and all that sounds compassionate again, but it's really not compassionate to send people on a 1,000-mile journey to get in line in a country that they're not a citizen of. It's not compassionate to our citizens, and it's actually not compassionate to them with some of the stuff they go through as they make that trip. So the incentives have to be stopped. But probably the biggest one, the most complicated one, and the hardest one for politicians, which is why I'll tell you I will not become a politician, I'm sorry. I'm not trained. I'm trainable, but I'm not trained. Is jobs, right? They can't walk north or come in through any port of entry, actually, and then overstay their legal means of entry, and then get jobs. As long as they get jobs, what's their incentive to leave? We need to take the incentives away. So I will push for closing down the ability for anybody in the country illegally to work. And that means holding employers accountable.
Amen.
It's not just gather up a few folks every now and again and get a photo up, sending them back to their country. You got to stop the employers from being able to, we got to help them too. The electronic background check, E-Verify, I guess they call it, that can be improved. I mean, we have some pretty decent background check stuff that the military uses. That could be improved. We can do some things to help them. But if you're hiring illegals and you're found to be doing that, you need to be held accountable. So if you close the incentives and you close the welfare, whether it's education or medical or food, then they'll stop wanting to walk across, and then that will help funnel them to the actual ports of entry. Then we can talk about immigration, right? Then we can talk about immigration reform. Immigration reform probably is required in the country. That is a federal level responsibility. Immigration reform needs to include some kind of metrics. That doesn't mean you have to be a genius or rich. It means that we need to have a federal level recognition of what we need to be bringing into the country. And whatever those metrics are, could change. They could change every couple of years, right? Because we could bring in enough nuclear physicists this year, and next year we need technicians, or the year after that we need metal work. It doesn't matter what our needs are. We need to be doing that, again, kind of like the military does. We enlist on an annual basis based on the current needs, not on a 10-year-ago plan. So the immigration reform probably needs to happen. And that's the point where you can talk about what do we do about the folks that are here, and there may be some negotiating room on what we do about folks that are here and have been here. And I forgot to mention, by the way, I'm a big supporter of removing the, I forgot what they call it, when they come across the border and have a baby, it's automatically citizen. That just doesn't.
Anchor babies.
Yeah, anchor baby, and then of course then the family gets, that's just, I'm not for any of those things. I am absolutely about our sovereign, the sovereignty of our nation, and the importance of being able to keep the greatest nation in the history of man moving forward as an example to the rest of the world of what freedom really means.
Yeah. Praise God.
So I'll comment on two more things. One of the, that I find to be a challenge. The first one is easy, that's term limits. I'm a term limits guy. I like to say that I'm not a politician, and there's always somebody in the audience that goes, "Yeah, he's running for office." Yeah, you're right. I am. I have a reason for doing that. I think it's the right thing for me to do at this point in my life. I believe I have the capacity to do it for you. So I am trying to be a politician, but I will not become a politician. It is not, in my mind, it should not be a career. Politics should be a service. You should have a servant attitude towards your fellow citizens. You should go do it, and then you should go home. And I know some folks are against term limits, and that's fine. I don't expect to agree with everybody on every topic. The reason there's two main reasons why I think term limits is important. Well, actually, there's three. One, every time somebody gives me an example of a great statesman that's in office and says, well, you know, we put term limits, he has to leave. Then I'll point at the 8 or 10 others that are in D.C. that we all want to go home. So having one great one doesn't offset the other ones.
Right.
The other reason is, when you look at it from a primary point of view, and make no mistake, team, I'm trying to convince you that I'm the right candidate for you, and I want you to get out in the primary and deliver me to your district. If you wait till the general, it might be too late. And I'm not so sure that we always do get the option in the primary. I think the party delivers us, the primary candidate, too often.
Yeah.
So I think those are, that and the fact that politics should not be a career. It just should not be a lifelong endeavor, in my view. So that's why I'm a term limits guy. The last one I'll comment on here, for right now, anyway, is pro-life. I'm absolutely pro-life, 100% pro-life. I will tell y'all though, I am challenged on how we take care of rape victims. It doesn't necessarily mean I'm for abortion, but it means that, because I've said that and I've gotten cut off by staunch pro-life guys, and I understand that. The sanctity of life is important. Abortion is absolutely murder, and this crazy stuff we're talking about in our country right now is evil.
Yes.
It's absolutely evil.
Thank you.
But we can't, I don't believe in our words, just dismiss a 12-year-old that got raped and is pregnant
Right.
and go, well, go have your baby. We owe her something. I don't know the exact answer. I'm looking for that answer. But when folks want me to just say, you gotta be pro-life 100% up and down, I'm challenged on that one topic. So I ask you to understand my thought on it and know that I'm thinking it through. And I'm trying to figure out what the right way to come to a conclusion on that is. Okay. This is typical. I lost track of which page I wanted to pay attention to. That happens to me a lot. So you know what I'm gonna do? If it's okay with everybody, I'll go to questions.
Okay.
Is that okay?
I got it.
Did I torture you long enough?
Didn't bore us at all, so.
Awesome, thank you. That's very kind.
I just have a statement.
Yes, sir.
Years ago, Dr. Coop, who was the Chief Medical Officer of the United States, I forgot the actual term.
Surgeon General.
Yeah, thank you, Surgeon General. He was a pediatrician who's done thousands of baby deliveries. And he said in his time of service, he's never yet seen a lady that was pregnant by rape. I'm not saying that can't happen, but it's so rare. And that, you know, there's something about that's going on in that person's body when she's being violated like that. And it is very, very, very rare.
You know, you know, I mean, God is merciful, and
Absolutely.
and hopefully that's true. But I think we also know it's not true in all cases. And as a matter of fact, I've been counseled about some folks who are the people?
Yeah.
That's not my question. That's not my question. My question is whether or not I can just dismissively say to a family that has experienced rape or a potential future rape victim, you're pregnant, that's it. And I struggle with that side of the docket. None of the other ones, none of this crazy, you need to pay for my abortion, you need to pay for my birth control, and if it doesn't work, you pay for my abortion again. I need to have promiscuous sex, it's my right to my body. I'm sorry, ladies, I don't agree with that. I don't know, what are the other ones? I can't think of them. All these topics drive me nuts.
With the rights and responsibilities.
Exactly, yeah, that's right.
So if you
That's
want
right.
the rights, you have to be responsible.
Yeah, it's not a woman's health issue, and it's not that's a reproductive right. It's not your reproductive rights start and end before you enter the bedroom. As far as I'm concerned, that's male and female. So you guys all see how I stand. That's the only side of it that I struggle with, and I struggle with it because I absolutely believe in the sanctity of life, but now I'm really visualizing the teenagers. Not that I don't have compassion for an older lady either, but you would expect that an adult have a little more capacity to deal with tragedy.
Right.
And this could be a family rape, or it could be somebody they don't know. I just struggle with that one, so I want to be straight up with you and tell you where I'm thinking.
Sure. Well, I want to finish my statement was that there should always be, in any form of government, there still has to come down to an individual case and right. There comes a time where we must take, whether it's something like a child being born, someone who just, I don't know, it escapes me right now. But there comes a time where we can put a point in their condition, for these, where then it comes down to the point of the individual for them to make a good decision based on counseling on both sides. And then let them make
absolutely.
a decision.
No, absolutely. And so therefore, for all of us that are pro-life, and most folks in this room, I believe, are as conservative-minded as I am, therefore, we're not looking for government solutions. However, if we're going to be staunchly pro-life, we need to support safety nets to help folks out with some of these challenges. So, yes, absolutely. Okay, other questions? Yes, sir.
To bring up pro-life again, I had this argument with a Catholic priest. He's a friend of mine. I do not believe in abortion. He is totally against abortion. I tell him God didn't give me the right to judge these people that do have abortion. I'm totally against it. I understand where you're coming from. You're, for one, a politician. You have to stay in somewhat of a neutral zone, but still keep your own ethics. In that, when you do become a congressman, working across party lines, you promise you will not cave and support being a Republican and the people that are in this room. If you do, you have my vote.
I will absolutely not cave on any topic. And I have 32 years behind me and a lot of soldiers that know that.
Very good.
So that's why I tell you, I can only prove it to you in my actions as we go forward.
James 2:18.
One of my closing things is talking about what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for anybody to endorse me tonight, to decide that I'm your candidate tonight. I want you to study me. Go to my website. There's 4 interviews posted on my website. You can listen to what I said to those particular 4 interviews. I've already pointed out to you the Secretary of State, and I'm going to try to pull that video over to my website as well, but he's got all those youth straw polls posted on his website, so there's 5 opportunities you can hear me. If you're inclined, if you take one of those cards, my website is referenced on the card. There's an email attached to the website. You can write to me on that email. I hope someday that I'll be so busy that maybe I won't get to every email, but my intent is to personally get to every email, at least between now and 2 June, the primary. You can give me guidance, you can ask me questions, and talk to me, and over the time, I will prove to you that I am the conservative that I'm telling you I am. I am the right guy with the capacity to do this job for you. become a lifelong politician. I'm sorry, I'm gonna comment that again too. There's one other thing about lifelong politicians and the term limits that I forgot to mention that they talk about. Well, you know, if you got the guy in there and he's learned the job, and now you gotta have, you know, we don't wanna let him go because now he knows the job. Well, I challenge that premise too, because does that mean that we can only have politicians, ever? Because they're gonna leave. Does that mean we've gotta send them into working for politicians when they're 22 and they do nothing but, you know, either work on their staff or become their chief of staff over the course of the 25, 30 years, and that's all they've done, and that's the only guy we can elect? The other side of that is, here's what we do in the Army. We train each other. Every time, you know, every 2 years, every year to 2 years, I changed jobs for 32 years. Now, they were all in the infantry, so you could argue there's some similarities, but different levels, different staffs, different type units, and every place that I went to, the guy before me, as I did for the guy coming after me, we provided each other a couple of weeks of training and knowledge, right? So I will go to Congress for you, I will serve 3 to 4 terms, and then when you pick the guy to replace me, when you pick him, not me, when you pick the guy to replace me, I'll make sure he gets everything I have to offer him from the time he wins the primary to the time he walks into the office door in January. Yes, ma'am.
Back to Trump, because you did say we want to reelect Trump. What are you going to do? How are you going to respond to the other people who are so Trump haters? And even some of them are even, you know, a lot of them are Republicans. And every Democrat is rabidly against Trump. How are you going to respond to those people? Because you're gonna have to work with them.
Yeah.
So how are you going to respond?
Yeah, working with them is a challenge. Now, because there are certain topics where I'm going to find it very hard to find the ability to work with them. I do believe a couple of things though. One, again, if you look at my career and you look at the opportunities that I had to work with other services, and you know, Army and Marines can't get anything right unless we're working against the Navy, right?
I'm sorry.
But I was in many jobs where I had to work with other services and other governmental agencies and find common ground and find ways to find solutions. So I have the skill set to do that. The other thing I hope is that we start with that constitutional question. You can generally find common ground with folks that you don't agree with if you can at least look at the Constitution and say, yes, that's the wrong level. Let's go argue about that at the state or the county level or as individuals in our front yard. But let's not look for the government to tell us what the answer needs to be. That's two things that I believe. So I believe I have the skill sets to do it, but I'm gonna tell you, it's gonna be a challenge. Now, as far as defending the president, it depends on what topic they bring up. But just in general, I'm gonna say, if you're Republican, you have to respect the actions of the man. You know, whether you believe some of the rhetoric, and I don't believe a lot of it, okay, he talks a little rough. I'm probably not gonna call my opponent a name, but I don't care if he does that because he executes. He made promises, he has followed through on those promises. He continues to fight for us. And absolutely phenomenal to me, the man works 20 hours a day.
Yeah.
And he continues to make gains, even with all the attacks against him. Doesn't matter who's attacking, whether you think it's the media, you think it's the Democrats, or, you know, sometimes it's folks on our side of the aisle that are attacking him. And yet, while he deals with that, and he sends out tweets, some that are awesome and some that are kind of
A little less than
less than awesome, he deals with them every day, and then he goes back to work, and he delivers us a 4-day agreement with Turkey.
Yeah.
He pushes North Korea to the brink of a peace agreement. I mean, okay, well, he hasn't done it. That's the new critique here, right? He's taken us further with North Korea than any president
That's right.
since 1953.
I agree.
Than anyone. It's taken us further than anyone. He has brought back remains of our soldiers. If nothing else, that's an accomplishment no one else has got done.
Absolutely.
So there will be some challenges, but I won't cave.
Thank you.
Another challenge. So here's my starting statement on that. The federal government should have never got involved in it.
Amen.
But I'm not naive, I'm not gonna tell you that here's 2019, and President Obama got the federal government involved, and I'm gonna be able to magically get us back out of it. But I do have some ideas, and one is I would really like to see what I would term as routine care pushed back to the states and find privatized solutions and get us back to our own insurance, and maybe keep the federal government involved only in the catastrophic level where folks are at risk of going bankrupt. Like I said, I would rather we weren't in it at all, but we got to take it a step at a time. So I think that's the first thing. We divide healthcare into two pieces. One of them being your daily, your routine, your annual checkups, your normal stuff, and one being catastrophic, diagnoses of cancer and stuff like that. I've got more studying to do on Medicaid so that I can figure out the exact right answer to that, but I'd certainly rather see that pushed back to the state level where you have closer care. And I forgot one of my great punchlines earlier too, and this is a good segue to that, and it goes to my constitutional problem-solving statement. The lower you solve problems, the longer they stay solved, right? And that's something my non-commissioned officers taught me 30 years ago when I was lieutenant. We gotta go to the captain or the colonel for an answer. That answer isn't gonna last very long, and everybody's gonna be in trouble for a little while, right? But if you let the problem get solved low, the problem stays solved a lot longer. So I know that wasn't the best answer. I've got more studying to do, but that's the way I kind of look at healthcare, where it exists in 19. Had I been there 8 years ago, I would have emphatically fought against any idea of the federal government getting involved in running our healthcare system. Yes, sir.
You were talking about incentives and the immigration. Well, what about the incentives with the people who don't work? If they don't work, they can just go sign a piece of paper, they get free money, free food. I can understand being handicapped,
Yeah.
some kind of disability where you can't work.
Yeah,
But as a Christian, it also says,
God's terrible.
God helps those who help themselves.
Yeah.
Okay, why shouldn't our state, as a conservative state, help those who help themselves?
No, absolutely. So,
I'm tired of- I hate to say this, I'm tired of paying for people to live better than me.
Amen. Right.
I've been to 5 different foreign countries, 3 different war zones. I can tell you there,
I'm with you.
and I can look down the block and see people that don't work, they eat better than me, they live better than me. I just see that as a wrong deal.
Yeah, so, I don't want to answer that. I'm absolutely with you.
Don't answer that, that's my son.
What's that?
That's my son, don't answer
No,
that. Love him to death, but he might get you in trouble.
No, I'm gonna answer, because I'm completely with you. And of course, again, I want to take the opportunity to point out that legal immigration, legal immigrants, have a right to get in line, not in front of, but along with American citizens for things that are available in our country. They don't have a citizen's right to them. But illegal immigrants do not. No, I'm with you.
That was a citizen question.
I'm making my picky point.
Oh,
I
okay.
want to drive that point home to folks,
Alright.
that legal immigration and illegal entry they're just not the same thing. So illegal entry, getting in line, no go. They gotta get out. Now, American citizens that need help. I would much prefer, once again, that our solutions to Americans that need help, that not even state level, that should be local. That should be our churches. That should be each other,
Yeah.
helping each other out. Of course, that's not the way it is. So maybe we can work toward that, but in the short run, if you're going to get in line for free stuff, you should have to do work. You should
That's
have
what
to
I'm
do work. So the idea that it's too unfair to make somebody have an ID card to get in these lines is ridiculous. And when they get in these lines, they should have to be able to show that they spent a certain amount of time looking for work. They can't turn down work just because the idea that somebody doesn't want to do that job. Too bad. I did a lot of jobs I didn't want. Did a lot of jobs I didn't want to do when I was a kid, trying to make a couple extra bucks so I could have a soda on the weekend. I did a whole lot of jobs in the Army I didn't want to do. But they should have to show that they look for work, verifiable, didn't turn jobs down, and they should absolutely have to do something. So they should, I don't care if it's sweeping the sidewalks, do some kind of labor work, supervised by those that hand the checks out, and before they can get a check. So those are two things I think we can do. We used to do them to some degree, long time ago, and I think we need to get back to that, so that there is some kind of effort, some kind of pride in having earned that, that particular check. So, those two I think are probably the best part of my answer. The other parts are harder, but I think we need to push away from so much ability to get free stuff. And that gets us to your question. I cannot, at this point, figure out where I could get common ground with a politician that wanted to talk about free college or whatever. It doesn't even matter. A free college, if I incurred a debt yesterday by my own free will, whatever it was for, I have no right to come to the government and ask for a solution from my neighbors today. You know, now I think it would be ridiculous going forward for us to pay for all college. It would be useless to society. It would make college degrees not really worth all that much. But if you've already got the debt, we're gonna tax everybody else who paid off their debts, paid off their college loans, put 3 kids through college without asking for a dime from anybody, as I'm sure many of you have done, and now we're gonna pay your debt off because your debt's too high. Not a good plan. How about we do this? How about we get the federal government out of the education business, and then supply and demand would cause the college tuition would come down because they wouldn't be getting so much free government money, which allows them to raise the rates very easily, and there's no pushback on supply and demand because the student just goes and gets higher grant money or higher loan money. That's part of the problem.
I gotta go back to Medicaid. The wages you have to be under to get Medicaid is below poverty level. My son has 4 kids. He's not working right now because of medical reasons. He got unemployment. Unemployment, you make too much money to get Medicaid. So he has to have Humira shots that are $5,000 or $6,000 a month. And Medicaid with copay. Has anybody thought about that?
I don't know. But that's-
Okay,
that's-
because there's a range of wages where people don't have insurance, they can't get Medicaid because if they work, they can't get medical care. If they do work, they can't get insurance, you know.
Okay.
So there's a gray area there. The wages have stayed down so far, you know, that they can't get medical care. He can't. He's in a rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
It's a good thing he's got his kids.
No, you know, that's another great observation, and I'm gonna look at that copay for
Medicare. For Medicaid.
Medicaid, Medicare.
Medicaid,
That's,
another thing is, why don't they drug test them?
Yes.
Yeah.
To receive benefits.
Now, I'm gonna get to that in a second, but I'm gonna say,
Okay.
again,
There's
just to
so
go
many-
back to my
There's so many
theme,
gray areas there, that, people that aren't registered can go to One World, Medical, and, there, I see a lot of, I hate to say it, but, Latinos go there, and, we don't know if they're registered or not, or, you know,
well, listen, a couple of things you brought up in there, but one, I'm gonna say, one of the reasons it's that complicated is because the problem is being solved or guided at too high a level. I hate to keep repeating that.
right.
But that makes it a challenge. You can't sit in Washington DC and administer a program properly. Absolutely for drug testing. I would be for drug testing for welfare and just about anything else where you're getting something that's being paid for by your fellow citizens.
I was talking to my son today, and if he goes without Humira, he's got psoriasis, he's got stuff with his stomach, his joints, he can't hardly walk,
Oh, I'm sorry.
and he takes care of 4 kids.
And
And they
so,
don't take account of the 4 kids to have Medicaid for him. That's out of the picture. Doesn't matter, you got 20 kids, you have none. It's the same amount.
Right.
So
Right.
it's, it needs to be changed.
And so, the last thing I want to move to another question, but IDs. IDs. The idea that we can't have ID cards in this country, I mean, it's really silly. I mean, you have to have one to drive a car, but you don't have to have one to
Being
vote.
registered.
Registered to vote, and therefore that same registration could absolutely be used for anything that you're going to get from the government. I should say more correctly, to get from your fellow citizens.
I know
You should
several
absolutely have to
Latinos that
have-
are really good people. They've been here for years. They
Yeah.
cannot get registered because there's too much red tape to go through. They came over illegally because I know one that was getting shot
Well,
at.
that's,
you know.
as I said earlier, we can't deal with that until we close the
Close the
border. Yes,
border.
ma'am.
Okay, my question is about the $15 an hour minimum wage that the Democrats keep putting forward. What I want to know is, if they raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, the prices of everything, gas to groceries and everything is going to go sky high. What do you do with people on a fixed income? Because the government's not going to raise disability to
Yeah,
$15.
yeah, I'm gonna tell you, this goes in that category. It's
It's
a cultural mindset that we have to do, cultural shift of our minds that we have to do, because we've been moving in these directions since about 1975, maybe earlier than that. No, minimum wage, I'm absolutely against it, across the board. The minimum wage it doesn't solve the problem you're purporting to say you're gonna solve, just like gun control. It doesn't solve murder, it doesn't solve evil. Minimum wage, you're absolutely right. Minimum wage, first of all, it isn't really designed for you to raise a family on.
Yeah.
It's designed for entry-level work. And so now you got folks, even if you look at, you know, when I was a kid, I worked minimum wage. I think they had one then, it was like 10 cents an hour. Mine was $1.50. But,
79 cents.
but you know, you're working and the boss gives you a 10-cent raise,
Yeah,
and then next month, the minimum wage goes above where you are.
yeah.
And so now the people that are coming in the door are getting paid the same or more than you were getting paid when you started a year ago. How does that help anybody? And then more importantly, it just raises the prices.
Yeah.
And so now you get a little more money every month, and now the prices of the stuff in the store goes up so they can pay your wage. Or they lay folks off so they can afford their workers. Minimum wage doesn't work, and it hasn't worked anywhere that it's been tried, and there's been a couple of cities that have tried any more than universal income will work.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if this is a proper question, but as you watch the television, you see all these homeless people shacked up all over, and I know they, tent city, okay. And then the illegals that come in, they fly them, they get on an airplane, give them money, send them to a destination. And I know over there in Omaha, they pay for, these are not all illegals, these are from all different countries, that they pay their rent. Who is responsible for that? Is it the state, is it the federal? Because if you ask me, they're coming over, they're flying them someplace, and everybody's talking about money. Wouldn't that save us a lot of money if they maybe took care of their homeless people and not the foreigners? I don't know, I don't know if that's federal or state or.
Well, I absolutely agree with you. I'm not familiar with any federal program that's homelessness, in my view, is absolutely not a federal level issue.
Well, there was a
Homelessness,
fire over there in Omaha, and these were from, I don't know what country. And they were all in this one apartment complex that burnt down.
yeah. I have read recently where a couple of cities have established programs where they're paying some of the rent for illegals, which again, I
Well,
think is
no,
phenomenally
these
wrong.
are people that, I don't know, they're just foreigners.
They came from Pelosi's district.
Yeah.
But I mean, everybody's talking about money. Well, if they didn't pay for these people wherever they're from, they could take care of some of the people in this country.
Well, that's logical. That's absolutely logical. But I'm gonna tell you, I don't necessarily agree with that, because we should be delivering our tax money to the federal government and our state government to solve problems we expect them to solve, right? So just because I take money away from this program over here, because we eliminate it, we
So
stop,
why are we
right?
doing it in the first place?
Exactly. But if I do eliminate this and I can recoup that money, it doesn't mean I want to take it over here and put it in a program that I still don't agree with. So I would personally not be a big supporter of paying free rent.
Well, I'm just saying, if you swap one out, you take care of
No, I'm
our
with you.
people,
I'm with
instead of taking care of somebody else.
Yeah, I'm with
But
you.
a lot
And
of
if you know
those
that they
are
get food
nonprofit organizations that are paying for that, and,
That's true.
churches.
Churches.
That's
true. Yeah.
And that's okay. I'm fully for that, except for
I'm not
it's an
okay
illegal.
with that because those.
Unless it's an illegal,
nonprofit-
unless it's an
That's right.
illegal,
And that's what they're
unless it's an
doing.
illegal, that I'm not for.
That is
But-
what they're doing.
But churches and citizens taking care of each other is a good answer. Federal government,
Right.
state government is not. Illegal should not be in the country.
That's right.
I worked for Omaha Public Schools for 30 years, and they have programs for aliens, basically. Some of the schools are Spanish-speaking, and nobody speaks English there. And they have English as a second language. They have Nigerians, I think they're Nigerians. They have apartment complexes for them. Omaha Public Schools pays for a lot of that. I know that because I've seen it, you know. And it's the elected officials that do this. The Omaha Public School Board are elected officials, and they are liberal, you know, and they have a lot of programs that don't contribute to the education of the children.
Well, I absolutely agree with that, and I don't know where the question was in there, but I'll tell you
Well,
this,
there's-
we should,
It's a food
we-
programs and.
right, we should not have a federal government requirement to have second and third languages in our businesses or in our schools.
They do.
Or, I know they do. I'm telling you, I'm completely against it. Listen, I'm all about, I struggle learning another language. If anybody can speak more than one language, impresses me. I had a command sergeant major that spoke 6. And that's awesome. But you know what? He didn't speak, thank you. He didn't speak 6 languages. When he was talking to my soldiers, he spoke 1.
Right.
So there, in my view, there should absolutely not be any federal requirement for multiple languages. Now, if a business chooses to use other languages on their menus or with their wait staff so they can encourage customers to come to their business, more power to them. I hope they do well.
Wouldn't
If
say
schools want to teach second languages,
the schools, what do they fall under?
well,
Federal or state?
a little bit of both.
Both.
And a little bit of both. And the reason for that is in the 90s, when President Clinton was in office, he generated the idea that if you're receiving federal money, you've got to follow federal rules. And that's kind of where the education had already been taking a turn in that direction. But that's kind of where, in my view, it got really bad because it didn't just go from they're getting, you're getting federal money for like supplies or something. If you're getting a grant, this was in colleges, if you're getting grants, or if you're getting students with federal loans or federal grants or federal scholarships, then you're going to have to follow federal law in that school, and then teach curriculum that they want you to teach. Well, so my view is the answer is we need to get the federal government out of education. That should be a state level requirement. The federal government at best should be providing general guidance. Not policy, not directives, but general guidance. Hey, as a country, we are forecasting a need for doctors or lawyers or technicians or some of the stuff I talked about earlier. That would be a good federal government level role. We see 4 or 5 years from now that we're going to have a need for an increased number of X or whatever. So we would recommend to the schools that we have this kind of a curriculum. But let's get the federal government out of it, and then it'll be an easier fight for us with our states, whether or not they're
Isn't the
teaching
illegal
6 languages.
aliens that are in the school a federal problem?
But the illegal alien shouldn't be here. So, I mean, it's a circular problem. But absolutely, illegal entry, illegal aliens in the country is absolutely a federal problem, and we need to solve that. Now, it's gonna take several years. First steps, as I already told you, we gotta close the border. We gotta close the overstay of legal entry. So all the ports of entry have to be controlled, and then we gotta close the incentives, and one of those incentives is education. Free education, free healthcare, free food, and jobs. Those incentives have to be taken away from illegal entry, illegal aliens in our country. Yes, sir.
Big Pharma. Life-saving drugs in this country cost 3, 4, 5, 10 times what they do in other countries. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so, one of the main reasons for that is because we're the primary country that's doing any of the research and generating the life-saving drugs, and then the other countries take them and distribute them less expensive. So one of the first things is I'm hoping the president's trade agreements and even some of his tariff pressure, which I'm not normally a huge fan of tariffs, will correct the course over the long term. That's one of the great things about it. If you look at some of the things he's doing, he's projecting out 4 or 5 years, not the next election. So I believe that that's probably the primary answer to that question.
See, that goes along with Jerry's son. I have a grandson who found out last year he's type 1 diabetic.
Yeah.
If he goes to work, they say he makes too much money, just $13 an hour, and that's too much to get Medicaid.
Yeah.
So he got to quit work because he can't afford the drugs on $13 an hour.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
You said multiple times, but I agree with it, getting government out of a lot of policymaking. How do you propose to do that?
Well, I think you got to start in the Congress because there's 435 of them building small coalitions, and I believe that's again why we want to get more conservatives into that little group.
But we're losing that battle. It seems like more liberals are getting in all the time.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to skirt away from your question for a second because, I get told on other topics. Well, I guess I'll go there. Convention of states. I've been told we can't support a convention of states. I'm going to get back to your point in a second. And my argument back to that is, well, wait a minute, it's in the Constitution. Of course we can support a convention of states. Now, one of the reasons that they don't want to support a convention of states is because of the potential for the states to meet in convention and then pass something that we don't agree with, like term limits, maybe, or a balanced budget. There's one that I like that most politicians don't. So my connection to that is, well, we have the same problem in the Congress. You can get those same policies passed by allowing liberals and progressive Republicans to continue to get reelected into Congress. I'll tell you, I guess I'm pushing myself a little bit more when I say this. I don't really like doing that, but we gotta let people to office that don't want to worry about the next election. We got to elect people to office that aren't spending their entire life as politicians trying to figure out that middle ground. Some things don't need a middle ground. Illegal entry does not have a middle ground.
Oh,
Right?
Amen.
yes.
My view, balanced budget should not have a middle ground. I don't understand how we can continue to operate the country in a manner where we just keep creating programs. This kind of goes back to our conversation, man. We just create programs and throw money at it. And then we assume we can tax enough to bring in the money to pay for it next year, which we never do, which is why we have that debt. It's all crazy. So, I mean, a couple of the folks that work in the political party in the state have asked me a similar question. Well, how are you going to do it? That's too hard. Your colleagues will never go with it. Well, I don't know. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But I've done hard before, and I've done things in the Army that took me 6 years to get them done. But I got them done, and I'll try it again. And I just think that's the way we got to do it. First, we got to put conservatives in the Congress, and then you have to expect me, and I will deliver you conservative constitutional problem solving, and I will build those small coalitions within those conservatives, and we'll start pushing those ideas. And we'll come back to the people and try to get you to not you just here, but you across the country, to tell their elected representatives that we want balanced budget. Again, I want term limits. I want the federal government to get further and further out of our daily lives and out of the things that our state should be solving for us. So, in the shorter term, I will be a huge advocate of the president's deregulation plan, and anywhere I can help with that, I'll keep working on it with it. He's done a lot of deregulation. In general, I mean, I know it's complex and there's a lot of topics, but in general, the executive branch should not have the ability to put requirements on us that come with fines and what otherwise taxes. That anything that's going to end up in resulting in us paying for it should have to be passed through the Congress. Hard, but I'm hard-headed and I've done a lot of hard things.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
Separation of state and church, needless to say, I'm concerned about that. In the past, if we would support a candidate, we were in a violation of a mandate by the government that we could lose our 501c3 status. President Trump has come in and said that's basically hogwash. He's got a way of speaking.
Yes.
And he said that the church can support candidates and can speak from the pulpit.
Thank God for me.
You're in the wrong place, I know.
No, I'm getting support. Unfortunately.
But what else has come down the pipe is taxation of the church,
Yeah.
whereas in the past we've been tax-free. Now, we know there's mega churches, and we know there's small churches like ours. And to a small church like ours, it would devastate us to be under taxation. At any given time, if we got more than $700-800 in the bank, that's a miracle. And because we do outreaches, we do bless people, we do support people, but not all churches do, and I'm not trying to stereotype, but I am concerned about getting back our right to speak, whatever I want to speak from that pulpit. And let my congregation be the judge if I should say that or not. And if they don't like it, they leave. If they like it, they stay and invite their friends.
Right.
And but that's how it works.
Yeah,
But the government has come in and says, this is who I can marry and who I have to marry if they come to me. And that's not going to happen.
No, I'm with you. So you've got a lot in there, but let me start with saying this.
I got more.
That's wear me out.
Wait till I talk about Islam. But go ahead.
I'm about to jump
So
in
read
there
along.
in a second. First, that's a great example. Once again, the government creates a program, and then that program becomes a tool of directing you how to do your business. So I was going to try to get a little humor in there. You kind of, I love what you said. I'm going to come in, I'm going to tell my teammates what I believe that they need to hear, and that's either going to draw people in to listen to me, or it's going to cause folks to leave. Kind of like a business. If I'm running a business, I'll cater to the folks that want to come in and spend their money in my business. And if I can't do that, then they're going to walk away. And I have the problem of going out of business or making money based on the constituents that are coming into my restaurant or coming into my gas station or coming into whatever. The federal government gets any kind of opportunity to provide something to you, a 501(c)(3) QRZ status, and now they're going to tell you what to do. That's wrong.
Right.
That is absolutely wrong.
I'm not a 501c3.
I don't think I support the tax idea either. The first thing he said was separation of church and state. The definition of that has been mangled,
Yes.
increasingly mangled, probably since we created the New Deal about 80 years ago, to create something that's just absolutely not wrong. This is a Christian-based country founded on right, and
God we trust.
The idea of church and state was that the church won't run the federal government. Not that a man that's serving in the federal government can't be guided by his belief in God.
Right.
So this separation of church and state thing is just completely wrong right now.
Thank you. Yeah.
I know you're going to try to get me in trouble with the statement I'm about to make. That's okay, because I can take it.
You're fine.
All right, you're all set.
No, I was just gonna say that, one nation under God, one nation under God. We have free will by a creator, and we should be able to do that with the Constitution in line for all the amendments if we follow the Constitution.
Right.
For free
Right,
speech.
Right, absolutely.
And free choices, but within limits. I mean, there's, the rules and the regulations we have to live by, but
We are.
Right, yeah, right, absolutely. Yes, sir.
Now, this has actually personally affected me and multiple families in the area. Proper giblets for bathroom use.
Because you're proper what?
Giblets for bathroom use.
Yeah.
Gender is what he's trying to say. Oh my God.
Listen, I
A
absolutely,
question that you can answer.
no, I absolutely is.
I'm sorry I brought
The way
it.
I'll answer it is this. I very much believe that everybody should be treated with dignity and respect until they do something to earn otherwise. So I have no disrespect intended to a person that has a sexual preference different than mine or a transgender person. But that goes two ways. So the answer to your question is I'm absolutely, I can tell you this. No, I'm absolutely against a transgender going into the bathroom of the other.
This ain't
sex
a gay
at any
thing,
point.
ain't a straight
No,
thing, it's not a color
no,
thing, it's,
so-
my daughter's in there peeing with a dude.
No,
Yeah.
So no, I'm absolutely against it. So again, there are options. Unfortunately, if
And that's at a state level with the schools, because I went to the school board.
Said this on
about
public
this. Said this
TV,
in
trust
public
me.
TV.
Yeah.
I even asked him, how would you like a 6'2", 300-pound tattooed man following your daughter or your wife into the bathroom? Because I felt like being a girl that day.
Yeah. No, I'm
Do you see
absolutely
the
against
issue
it.
there? I'm pretty sure some of these guys here put a bullet in my ass.
I told you I should. Hey,
No, I'm with you, absolutely.
I got 10 more of them at home, boys.
No, again, we shouldn't invade their world, and they shouldn't invade ours, so, absolutely.
Right to
against
privacy.
The idea, right to privacy, I mean, no, I'm not for somebody.
If you get a nip tuck, go pee with the girls.
Right.
If you get a slip and pole, go pee with the
All right,
guys.
listen.
Jimmy, stop.
Don't do that.
We could be here all night, son.
That's all right.
I know, but that's disgusting. They should have left those restrooms the way they were supposed to be. There was a reason for it in the first place, and if anybody had any brains, they'd have figured that out.
My question on this, in many states right now, I believe in Wisconsin, Minnesota, Texas, they're going before the courts wishing to bring in, what is that, Sharia?
Sharia
law.
Sharia law. And many areas, I'm understanding, and I could be wrong, is adhering to this and saying, okay, because of what your beliefs are, we're gonna allow this. And that is absolutely insane. Where are we at in Iowa? Do you know or have a stand on this, or?
See, you're gonna get me in trouble. I do understand on it.
Okay.
Listen, I absolutely believe in the First Amendment, and folks have the right to freedom of religion. But if you're a practicing Muslim, your beliefs are not compatible with the U.S. Constitution.
Exactly.
Good answer.
Why?
In your view, militarily, is the government spending enough money on armament? Are we still on top of the heap?
Were you gonna ask me a question on that last one?
Yeah, what is the beliefs that are against the Constitution? This
Well,
is just for personal,
yeah.
I wanna know.
Well, I'm gonna give you just a one sentence answer on that. Their religion runs their law. Right there is backwards from the United States Constitution, where religion is protected by, but it does not run our country. That's a very complex answer. One of the problems with military spending is you're always chasing the next innovation. right? You're always chasing the next innovation, so it's easy on any particular day to say that we're not spending enough because somebody will point to some new piece of gear or some new weapon system, some new piece of armament and say we didn't buy that yet. Well, we didn't buy that yet because we funded the stuff that came out 6 months ago, 2 years ago, and now we've got it, right? I mean, the Bradley fighting vehicle, which I went to war in twice, which is a great vehicle, was designed in the 70s and or early 80s, I think. And, you know, I went to combat in it in 1991. First time that I'd been to combat. So you're always chasing that, and keeping up with that is tough. I do believe we're at the top of the heap in technology and our capabilities. But we have this challenge in our country, and if you look back from World War I to today, you see the waves. You know, we were spending virtually nothing, and then we decided to get into World War I, and the country performed miracles and went boom and went into World War I. And then what we do, we stopped spending and stopped innovating. And World War II started, and we were kind of way behind. And we came out of World War II, we went up, and we came down before Vietnam, Korea and Vietnam. And we did the same thing in the 70s, we went down. Fortunately, we went on an upward swing in the 80s and made up a lot of ground, and have really kind of stayed ahead since with a couple of smaller dips. So really the bigger problem is can we convince our elected officials, regardless of which side of the aisle they're on, to maintain a more even bow across the years instead of allowing these dips, because what tends to be our Democratic presidents want to dip so they can take money out of the Department of Defense and push it over into another program. That we need, that is what I think we need to stop.
Well, you read that our armament is in disrepair, planes need parts, this is wrong, that's wrong. Is that so?
I don't believe it is. Again, I believe that we had a dip from 2007 to 2015, 16. I believe we had a bit of a dip. But I don't believe that it was as exasperated as it was put in the media and by certain politicians over time. Not quite so. I don't believe. Good. Yeah. Not like, you know, I mean, in the 70s, we were doing airborne training without even jumping out of planes. So we're not doing that. It's true.
Literally, it's true.
What about our soldiers that don't have like personal body armor?
That's absolutely not true. It's
I,
absolutely not true. And you know, I got asked this question by a reporter who was trying to make a point recently, so I thought about it real hard so I could be more prepared to answer. It kind of goes to what I was talking about a moment ago. The Army and the Marines, our ground forces specifically, have absolutely bought all the armor required to outfit every armor required to outfit every person going into harm's way. Now, that wasn't necessarily always true. The first time, you know, 2003, when we entered Iraq, 2001, when we entered Afghanistan, we had only body armor. And over the course of the first couple of years, this country, every one of you as taxpayers, allowed our logistics systems and the identification of weaknesses in our gear. And by the time we hit about 2005, we had side plates and neck plates and groin plates, and we bought all this stuff. And we added pounds. And it was catch-22 here too, by the way. Soldiers take the stuff off sometimes because it's heavy and you're walking long ways. But that set aside, we absolutely had all the gear. And but it took time to field it. So then the next thing that happens is innovations. The body armor improves. We get better plates. We get, you know, this guy's got a plate that can only stop this kind of round, but this guy's got the new plate. Well, every time something new comes out, so this is a catch-up thing, right? So every time something new comes out, there's you know, 4 of us here. We're all getting ready to go, but we can only afford to buy one right then, or the system can only supply one. So and I'm talking ones. I'm talking on the scale of thousands, right? we deliver all this gear to the unit that's getting ready to go, and then the next unit is waiting in line to get it. And for the last 8 years, I can confidently tell you, nobody went overseas without the latest gear available. There comes your next problem. Is it the latest gear available? Well, yes, it's the latest gear that our logistics and our budgetary system allowed us to purchase. And oh, by the way, if as a budget guy in the Army, logistician in the Army, if I buy $1 million worth of gear and outfit it to all the soldiers, and then 3 days before they leave, a new piece of gear comes out that's a little better, and it costs $1.5 million. Do you want me to spend that $1.5 million, or do you want me to use the $1 million I've already spent? That's a challenge. It's an emotional challenge, because
At a gun show, a woman was taking donations to be able to send body armor to her son's platoon.
Dragons.
And
Okay.
I was, yeah,
Yeah,
that was, because, so.
I would challenge,
They were saying that a whole, half the guys don't have this, and I was like,
Yeah.
You were getting scammed.
I would tell you, unfortunately, you need to be real careful about scams. If they're trying to buy body armor, I think they're probably not being truthful. I can't validate that. I would just caution anybody. The second thing is, if they're buying comfort items, it may be true. There may be a later innovation out that you can buy in the in Ranger Joe's or even in a sporting goods store that's more comfortable than the stuff the Army has. But that's, again, goes to that case where, do we buy the new stuff? But soldiers are allowed to buy their own stuff if they want to, and sometimes great family members go out there and try to do that.
Depends on you.
But it does not mean that the unit doesn't have it. I am here to tell you that they're getting all the gear that they're supposed to have before they deploy, but there may be something later that's out that folks are trying to buy. But I would also be careful with scams.
okay, yeah.
Yes, okay.
There you go.
Thank you, Courtney.
Thank you. It's all right.
What paper?
Daily Opera,
Yeah, but what day?
Saturday. So tomorrow.
Okay, thank you, Larry.
Not tomorrow, but Saturday.
Okay,
In 2 days,
thank you.
day and a half.
So, anyway,
Okay.
the Army, the Marines, the Navy, we do not send anybody over without all the latest gear that the logistical system was supposed to buy at this time.
Even if you don't need it, you still carry it.
Yeah, but our private contractors
That's
always,
true, too.
private contractors always had better gear. Why was that?
Because that's private company.
All right, what's next?
Okay, guys, we're gonna cut this for tonight. First off, I would like to thank Bill. Yeah, oh, sure, yeah. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. That's right. I did have a closing comment. I said it a little bit earlier, but I want to thank you for allowing me the opportunity to talk to you. And whenever you do things like this, folks are always asking, well, what are you asking of me? What am I asking of you? And so I decided I was going to address that tonight. Of course, listen, I'm not the politician that's got a bunch of big money backers. I personally don't care if I ever get them. If you throw a couple dollars our way, it will be used efficiently. I promise you that, for office equipment and the little bit of gear that I need. But what I really need tonight, and I think Craig's going to talk about it for me, if you're so willing, the Secretary of State requires me to get signatures to be on the ballot. And so if you're from this county, I have clipboards up here and would ask you to sign and allow me that many more signatures, get me that much closer to meeting the legal requirements to be on the ballot. But what I really want you to do is evaluate. I want you to take what you've heard from me tonight. I want you to study up on me on my website, ask me more questions. And if you decide that you think I'm a good candidate, then I need your phone calls. I need you to tell everybody that you know. I'd ask you to do that even if you think I'm an okay candidate. You may not choose to vote for me. Tell folks that there's an option out there. Don't let the party deliver us the candidate. Let June 2nd come and let all of you look at the candidates on the ballot and decide which one of you want. I hope you want me, If you don't, that's fine. I'll back the Republican, only because I'm loyal to the nation, and I won't do anything to deliver you another liberal.
What's your website?
My website is
It's on his card.
forcongress.com, and it is on the card along with the email.
I looked him up when I was in the hospital last week. That's how
I was just gonna, for the video purposes, of anybody watching.
I was a captive audience last week
If
too.
you-
Did you get it? Want me to do it again?
Yeah,
Schafer forcongress.com.
Thank you.
SCHAFER FOR Congress.com.
awesome.
I'd like to thank Bill for coming, and
No, go ahead.
I'd like to thank Bill for coming and bringing his lovely wife with him tonight, and I'd like to thank Pastor Dan and his wife and all of the people from the congregation here. You guys do a fantastic job out there supporting this organization right now with Bill, and we need him to get to Congress. If you take a look at the news media and the things that are going on, and there might be some Democrats out here, but I'm not treading on you, but I'm treading on the Democrats that are causing such a chaos in our community right now. They are causing hatred. I mean, it reminds me of going back to World War II and Hitler, of what he was doing and trying to get people so excited, and so the hatred, it just boils over. And right now, it's hard for the Republicans to stop that. You know, this is the first president that I can remember in my lifetime, and I'll be 74 this couple months. First president in my lifetime that I can ever remember that stood up for Americans. I mean, I cannot ever remember a Democrat president ever standing up for an American. But this president has. And that's why we need to support him, the Republican Party, and people like Phil that are giving his all, 37 years in the military, and has put a good job to get out there and grapple with some of these people that I wouldn't take to a dogfight. Again, I would like to thank everybody that came out tonight, get out and spread the word. Bill's gonna be back again. This is not just his first time, but he'll be out here, I'm sure, 2 or 3 times before the party.
What days is he gonna be at the gun show?
All weekend.
Yes.
All weekend,
He's
every
gonna
hour.
be.
All my kids go there, I'm
Yes,
gonna make
ma'am.
sure they
Starts
stop and
tomorrow
see it.
at 4
And,
o'clock.
and we have for you in the back tonight, there's refreshments, there's canned pop, water, whatever. Let's get together and just kind of do a little greet with everybody back there and have an enjoyable time. And again, thank you.
Yeah.